asleep amidst the trees. Bats all are swaying in the breeze. But one so light, anxious, wide awake, fearing all manner of ghouls, hags and wraiths. For your dolly Polly sleep has flown, don't dare let her tremble alone. For the witcher, heartless cold, paid in coin of gold. He comes, he'll go, leave naught behind but heartache and woe. Deep, deep woe. It's all silent for the night. Hours trembling as daylight dies. But when so light, anxious, wide awake, fearing all manner of ghouls, hags and wraiths, my dear Dolly.
Hi everyone and welcome to the Haunted Connections show. I hope you're all doing well. So we're bringing this to you from the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre in Hinckley, Leicester, and we are sponsored by Sims Vintage Antiques in Wootton Warren near Stratford. So tonight we have our lovely guest, Penny Griffiths-Morgan. Big welcome. We're all very excited to have you here this evening.
Oh, okay. That sounds ominous. Somebody's just
It's lovely to have you on the show and you know, for you to come and share your stories with us.
Well, somebody has just messaged me and said they can't get on the chat for some reason. Have you got any ideas why?
No, the chat's working fine. It's just
Yeah,
that
it does seem to be.
there's loads and loads of spam coming up. I don't know why.
Isn't there just? Yes,
Yeah,
I noticed.
I'm having to delete. I'm quickly deleting and all this garbage is coming up.
So I haven't found it.
So for anybody who doesn't know you then, Penny, while Neil's sort of just quickly clicking through that lot, for anybody who doesn't know you, do you want to give us a brief sort of info and just tell us what you do and all about yourself?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say hello to a few people who've come in that I've been sort of basically persuading them to come. Emma was the one who I told you was messaging me, and I thought she meant the musicians podcast thing that's going on tonight that I've been watching. But I just sacrificed everything for you guys. Nigel's on as well. He's another one. He's another airfield fanatic. So I'm sure he'll come up with some really tricky question for me to sort of really make my brain hurt. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's going to be an inventive one for you to have to block.
What's that?
The next one that's come up, is it Arabic or?
Oh, blimey.
Anyway, those people, hi Yvonne, those people who, it's good, isn't it? Those people who don't know me, I am Penny. I do, in a nutshell, haunted histories. Anything to do, if you ever see the name Haunted Histories on something, it'll be because of me. So I have the Higapop award-winning podcast, the Haunted Histories podcast, that I do every 2 weeks through Paranormal UK Radio. And actually my guest next week is sitting right in front of me on the screen right now. I'll be talking to her on Thursday about some things. Will I not, Miss Jane?
Oh yes, I'm very excited.
Oh, I've started. I'm making notes. Notes.
I hope you have some juicy questions for Jane, Penny.
My style. I don't know how many people here have actually listened. Oh, there's another one. And how many people have actually listened to my podcast before? And if not, why not? I don't tend to ask just questions. The way I like to do it is having a chat. So I think being a historian, it can get quite boring for some people if you just keep sort of going mark in 1927 mark. You can incorporate it in as though you're just having a chat, and somebody will go, "Did she just say? I didn't know that, huh?" And that's how I prefer to do it. So yes, there are questions, but it's not done in a sort of a Jeremy Paxman type of way. But yes, I mean, the show Jane and I are going to be recording is going to be a little bit different because we're not so much talking about hauntings. We're talking more about a past which is haunting in sense. So I have been doing some research on it today. I've got quite a bit more to do. And I'm waiting for the National Archives to send me through the copy of something as well. So I'm hoping that's by Thursday. But yes, it's all good. But yes, I'm also a writer. I'm a features writer in Haunted magazine. So every issue tends to have one of my articles in the not so horrible histories. I think that they did that in homage to the fact I come from Essex. Lots of horrible history. So you got the podcast, I've got the Facebook page that I love it when people share stuff too, like history and mystery and all that kind of thing, and get loads of dialogue going, asking questions. I love all of that. So I'm an author, and I have just published, or I'm in the process of publishing, my third book.
Very busy lady.
Yeah, and a mum, and I work and all of that stuff. But I find the history side and the research and the writing, it's my relaxation. In a sense, it's what I doing all of that side of it is what I do to actually chill out. Which I must admit, my husband can't understand how I can spend 4 hours sat in front of a computer researching something, and then he's like, "Aren't you tired?" And I'm like, No, I mean, good way. So yeah, that's pretty much me, I suppose.
Very, very busy lady, and you're a bit of a regular now with us, aren't you? Because we have you back quite often now.
I think so. I'm waiting for my season ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully, if
fingers crossed.
Hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, I'll be appearing at the centre in June.
Yes.
So, fingers crossed that's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I do apologise.
I've done some juicy research for that presentation as well, so I'm really happy to go ahead because I'm lucky about now doing this is I have got such an amazing network of people to talk to. Whether it be to do with history, whether it be like yourself to do with paranormal stuff, objects, you name it. And I was actually chatting to someone because the talk I was going to do at the centre, is on the nicknamed Spitfire Girls, i.e. the women who flew aircraft for World War II. And I'm actually in contact with someone who is one of their official historians, and she wrote her thesis on it and all of that kind of stuff, and she's a kind of a social media friend of mine, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh yeah, tell me what you want, I'll get it out, dig it out for you, I'll send it through, blah blah blah." And yeah, so it's great because most people I'm finding, they want to share what they know, whether it be paranormal experiences, whether it be history, whether it be things that have worked for them, things that haven't. I love that. So yeah. I am a bit of a regular.
I am looking forward to your talk, but I'm looking forward to getting you into the war room at the centre, because I think you're going to be like a little girl on Christmas Eve, so excited.
Well, the strange thing is, for anyone who doesn't like public speaking, I'll take these off for a second. The people who I need them on when I'm reading stuff. The people who don't like public speaking, when I say I'm excited about doing a presentation, I'm excited about getting to research, to talk to a group of people, they're like, "You what? You're mad? Do you want to talk to people?" And I love it. I love seeing people's reactions, and I love that. It's like I like on my page the conversation. Start, the questions like, "I didn't know that. What about? Did you know that?" I mean, it's like on the, I think it was the Wednesbury Paranormal page just now, and I was sharing about this show, and somebody had said that she thought she had an Anderson shelter at the bottom of her garden, but it wasn't as big as the picture. And I said, well, that's not an Anderson, that's a Nissen hut. They're different. Andersons weren't. And I showed a picture of the Anderson, and she was like, oh, no, it wasn't that. It was bigger than that. And well, it wasn't an Anderson. So we started having this conversation about what an Anderson was and why not everyone had them. And I love that. I love that kind of, oh, spam alert. I love that kind of exchange of information. And I've learned something that, you know, that they did build these like mass occupancy houses in effect, from what it sounds like. Mm-hmm. She didn't realize that people had to pay for them. The actual Anderson shelters, and yeah, it's I do just get excited about it. So yeah, if someone books me for a talk, I'm nervous, but I'm also buzzing because I just love the chance to get to talk to people.
But that's also because
I sound like such a nerd right now. I'm really embarrassed. I'll really back a bit. I haven't seen people much for the ride.
It's because it's a passion of yours, isn't it? It's like me and Jane. Now, before I did my first talk, I was trying to think of all the ways. Well, before I went on ITV, I was thinking of every excuse to back out. But it's a passion, and it is a bit like a drug. It takes you along, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely, and I've been doing public speaking since I was in my mid-20s. So 5 years. I wish. Facelift. So it's not something that's new to me, even though I've only been doing it on this side sort of probably about 3 or 4 years now. I have been public speaking in some form for over 20 years. So it's not new to me. It's just the subject matter I'm doing it is new. And I, if anyone ever wanted to learn how to do public speaking, my top tip, and this was given to me by my uncle before I ever did my first public talk back in my 20s. He said, work out how you're going to open it and work out how you're going to as long as you've done your preparation, the rest will come naturally. But if you've got in your head what you're going to say to open the talk, you won't panic so much. He's right. So I always, before I go on, I've always got like some witty lines. Sorry, I thought I could hear someone about to come in. I've always got some witty lines ready to start. And then I also know what I'm going to say to end it, like I do with my podcast.
Yeah.
And then everything else seems to go to fill in. You just start talking. So yeah, top tip for anyone who's got to start speaking: obviously revise what you're going to be talking about. Work out your opening sort of blurb. Work out your finishing blurb, and then let the rest just flow. So
it's completely opposite to the way I did my first talk.
Is it?
Yeah, I did my first talk at Karen Frey's Supernatural Fair down Evesham, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And the night before, I let all the hags at the centre for the evening. They were doing a live feed, right? And I thought, okay, I'll sit at home. It'll be quiet. I'll work out what I'm going to say. But I was watching their live feed, and it was so funny. I didn't write a word.
I don't write it down. I went
into this fair. I ain't got a clue what I was saying. So, like I normally, I just blagged it all the way through, and it seemed to go down well.
I blag the slide once I start talking. I have like little bullet points I want to make sure I'm going to cover. Yeah. And Jane was at my one I did for the Karen when my presentation went all a bit awry, and it managed to somehow mix itself with another version of the presentation. Do you remember that, Jane? It mixed itself with another version of the presentation done, and I'm just like, how the hell has this happened? Because it was perfectly fine when I left the house that morning. I'd had it downloaded onto a flash drive, and it was perfectly fine. And I'm trying to wing it through this presentation that the wrong slides are coming up with the right script, or vice versa. I can't remember which way round it was. And yeah, that's winging it. But
you still did a great job.
Thank you.
You got through it, and it was still very entertaining and educational, so it was good.
Yeah, what you lot didn't see was the little puddle from where I was standing, where I was
It's winging it with style. That's what we have to do, Penny. Okay.
I say 20 odd years of doing it, that's not the worst thing that's ever happened to me. So you know, it was just like, oh my days, people think I haven't prepared this, and I had, and anyway, it's all good fun. It's all good.
We do have a question for you.
Yes.
Liz says, if you could go back to any period in history to live, when would it be?
Oh, Miss Cormel, I've got 3, I'm afraid. I haven't got just one. Obviously, I would love to go back and see if the workhouses were as bad as people say they were.
Yeah.
Because I do an awful lot of work on workhouses, as you know. Yeah. And I find some of them were bad, but in the main, they saved people's lives. So I would like to go back and see if they really were as awful, the way that people were treated in them. They were as awful as some people seem to feel. Now, what I do find is the people that seem to think they were awful are ones that have read a lot Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens tended to base his workhouse theories on city workhouses, which were pretty dire. And also he mixes different workhouse eras in as well. But I would like to see that. I would also like to see what it really was like on the home front during World War One for the people who were left. And I would also like to have been around in the late 1930s, got my flying license and been able to fly for the ATA. That would have been, yeah, that's what I would have, that would be my choices.
Okay, cool. We are trying to get rid of as much of the spam comments as we possibly can. I know Tina's on the case as well. Please don't click on any of the links that these spams are putting on, because I don't know where it'll take you. Somewhere not good, probably.
There's so many scams at the moment. I mean, I know some dad just lost £3,000 from his bank account.
Really?
They're yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah.
No, don't click on anything at all. We don't normally get any. I don't know what's happened tonight.
Me.
It's because you're so popular, Penny. That's what it is. Okay, let's get back to what the top.
I have a gremlin following me everywhere at the moment. That's probably what it is.
let's get back to let's start the topic where we've got tonight: investigating old airfields. Yeah. So, do you want to start?
Well,
where do you start?
Where do you start? Exactly. That's what I'm trying to think of a place to start. I have always loved aeroplanes ever since I was this big. I've always my dad wasn't a professional pilot. He isn't a professional pilot, but he always flew gliders. He got his powered license when I was about 6 or 7. So I was always going to airfields with him. Air shows. As a family, we'd go to air shows, which I loved. And I even tried to get into the RAF when I was a teenager, but they weren't taking female pilots at the time. And I wasn't interested in being anything but a pilot. So I sort of went to you and left it at that. But from 3 or 4 years old, I would quite frequently go to the airfield where my dad flies from in Norfolk, called RAF Tibenham. Well, it's not an RAF, it was an RAF Tibenham, but it's Tibenham Airfield, and that's where Norfolk Gliding Club are based. Yeah. And even from a young age, I kind of, even before I started doing all this paranormal stuff, there was something about the place. It always felt busy, even when you were the only person there. That's the only way I can explain it. And as I started to get older and I started to ask more questions and I started to learn a bit more about what had happened there. And then as sort of time progressed, I started spotting different airfields, and like, that was an airfield. Now it's an industrial estate, or that's a runway. You'd fly over them, go out. If we go on like a rescue mission to rescue a glider that had to come down and we had to come and tow them out, you'd see a runway. And then I'd go and look into it and find out which airfield it belonged to. And it made me start realizing quite how many they were, especially in sort of East Anglia, and as you go up the Fens and obviously up the East Coast as well. And I always wanted to, we've got another one, 3.
Threes.
Yeah, I always wanted to start learning more about them. And I never thought Tibenham would allow me in, to be honest, because I thought they're all sort of middle-aged to slightly older guys. They're not going to believe in all this paranormal stuff. But because I've been going there since I was this big, most of them knew me and they knew my dad. And when my dad is on the committee, and when he said to them, "Would you mind if Penny came in and did an investigation here?" They're like, "Yeah, go for it." And then I start getting all their stories from them. Like some of these guys who I've known since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. Oh, Nigel, you just spoilt my line. I was going to say that about Norfolk. Somebody's asked what my favourite airfield is. I'll tell you in a minute. So I started sort of looking into it. And one of the most famous things, well, there's two probably really famous things about Tibenham, is that firstly, Jimmy Stewart, the actor, was based there. He flew Liberators from there. And also it was the home of the guys who got lost on what's called the Castle mission, which there's a video on my YouTube page about. And the Castle mission is something not many people know about, but it was horrific. Out of 30, I can't remember the exact number of aircraft they sent up for this mission, but they had an 88.5% casualty rate. And it wiped out almost the entire squadron. And finding things like this about it, and then having some of these guys who flew from there who are in their 70s and 80s, who I have known, like I say, since I was tiny, suddenly telling me their stories of things that had happened to them there. And firstly, I was blown away because I would never have imagined them to tell me this. But secondly, it started to reinforce what I thought about these airfields. For some reason, even if all you've got left is the runway, which is all there really is at Tibenham, something is still there. It still holds it, and some of it intelligent. It's not just it's events reoccurring. It is actual intelligent responses. And I'm going to be going back there because I've got some more plans, but it just started to really make me think about what these places had happened to them, and what was possible. So I'm very lucky, sort of having grown up in Norwich. There is so much around there. As Nigel, who's in Norfolk, who is another airfield nut like me. In fact, I want to give a shout out to Out There Paranormal, which is his group. They've got a great video about a place, and I can never remember how to pronounce it, but Deetham, which I believe it's near Dereham, but I'm sure Nigel will correct me. And they've been out there and done investigations there, and they've loaded their YouTube video up. And it's really, really interesting. And they've also got some other airfields they're going to be looking at. And hopefully I'll be able to join them on some when we're allowed out again. Because there's so many of these that people won't have heard of because they're not well known. I mean, your current RAF bases, most people will have heard of. But these ones that loads of people lost their lives at, but are now farmland, for example, they still need to be documented. They still need people to listen to. My opinion. And I know Nigel and his team are trying to do that, which I'm really HAPRC, sorry, I thought it was Dereham, sorry Nigel. And they're really behind that, which I think is amazing. To say which is my favorite airfield, well, I'd have to say Tibenham because I've been going there for 40 odd years, but my one I would like to get into, I really would like to get into, is Scampton, RAF Scampton, because of the Dam Busters link, and the fact there are ghost stories associated with the place. But it is a bit of a standing joke with my old parasearch colleagues that I have a crush on a dead person, because I actually, oh hi Gayney, you made it in. I have a thing about Guy Gibson, the Dam Busters leader. I think he's amazing. He was an arsehole. But he was amazing, and I would love to go to Scampton. I'm working on it, but I can't see it happening anytime soon. So my favourite has to be Tibenham from loyalty, but Scampton I think would be up there if I ever got in there.
Yeah. So, do you think these airfields and air bases hold the energy of the emotions that those guys went through?
Yes, I think it's not just what the pilots and the. I mean, if you think about it, we're looking at, say, and I jokingly said to someone we could play penny aircraft bingo here and see how many of these words I mentioned. I've already mentioned Jimmy. When you look at Liberator or the Flying Fortress, the American ones, most of them had 9 or 10 men on them. When you look at crew logs, the average age was about 22, 23.
Yeah.
And the fear they must have felt as they knew their aeroplanes were getting powered up. I mean, when you think of the noise from one of those big 4-engine bombers, be it Liberator, be it a Lancaster, be it the Fortress, be it anything like that, when you think of the noise from those engines, and they would hear those engines powering up, and they've got an aeroplane and then sit in it for 8 hours and then hopefully get back.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that concentration of emotion would have done. And then you haven't just got them. You've got, I mean, I've seen pictures of ground crew and commanders and stuff waiting for their crews to come back. And if you can think, when Castle happened, for example, there were all those aircraft that just took off one after the other, and they're waiting for them to come back, and they see 2 or 3 limp in. And you've got a ground crew waiting for their aircraft to come back, for their Liberator to come back, or Lancaster, or whatever it is, and they don't see it.
Yeah. That
feeling of loss. Yeah. I can't. I can't imagine it not to be ingrained.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's bring Jane's opinion, being a medium. What do you think, Jane? Do you think the emotion is still there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I know because I had an experience myself at one of the buildings up at Desford, and I was working up at Desford. It's the old Caterpillar base. Yeah, it's where they make the Caterpillars now. Yeah. And I didn't know at the time that it used to be a base. I just went up and started my job and got on with it. But I was actually working in one of the hangars, and there's 2 original hangars that are still there. And I was working in there, and I, without doing any research whatsoever, but knowing where it was, I picked up several guys, and this was one. But he's got his, and he was a Russian. His name was Ivan. And he was there, and there was also this guy as well. I felt he was an officer, and then there was also another young lad that took his own life. And also I did see an apparition of an RAF man. He stood right next to me in one of the hangars, and as I just looked at the side, and as I looked up, he just sort of disappeared. So I'm not sure if his head was missing or if he disappeared before I actually seen his head. So that was sort of my experience. But I didn't realise at all that site was used to be an RAF base, and it was I did look up a couple of the facts, and they actually started flying there in 1916. And it turned out it then went on to be a flying school, and they used to have the tiger moths there, and they had over 120 tiger moths there at one point. And in its peak, there was over they trained over 1,000 pilots there. And also it went on to be a factory, and they turned out they produced over 1,000 Spitfires there. So those Spitfires probably went on to be some of the Spitfires that your girls probably flew from that.
The girls could even have transported some of the tiger moths, because when the ATA first started, they weren't allowed to fly the combat planes. They were flying sort of things like the tiger moths to the training schools and everything else. So you could even have had some of the tiger moths.
Yeah, and the base actually closed in 1953, and that's when it was sold on to Caterpillar. Then after not long, and Caterpillar's been there ever since. So absolutely fascinated me, and I you know, I know that energy's there, and there was more energies there, but I never actually had time to sit down and actually connect with them so I could draw them and stuff like that. But the energies in these places are just, it's just phenomenal at times, because it just comes in like a tidal wave sometimes. And I mean, I was like, whoa, you gotta go back and let me work.
What a lot of people focus on, though, is the World War II side of flying. They forget about when 1915, 1916, when the Royal Flying Corps was around, and there are more Royal Flying Corps bases dotted around, or old ones anyway, than there were RAF and Air Force, because they couldn't fly as far, so they had refueling stops. And I mean, Tibenham has actually got one, and a lot of people mistakenly think it's where RAF Tibenham is now, and it's not. It's about a mile or so from it, and that was an RAF Royal Flying Corps base. Southend Airport in Essex, that was originally Royal Flying Corps before it came of RAF. Yeah, I'm sure that was fighters that went from there, British fighters. So there's so many around there, but then also you can add in the support facilities, because these bases, Sarah Edwards has said, do I know of any websites? That's tricky. Your best bet is just to Google them, because some of them are on Wikipedia, what they would have looked like. But if you ever want them, if you contact, just completely forgotten what it's called, RAF Henley, where the RAF Museum is in North London, I believe they keep stocks of them. But they're not free, I have to admit. And now there is a website, and I can't remember what it is, but what I will do is, after the show's finished, I will look it up and I will post the link onto the Haunted Antiques site for you, if that's
brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, brilliant.
Okay. Just to have a quick question. Oh, thank you, Liz. I was going to ask, is it the American bases you're looking for, or the UK ones? Because I know if you contact the RAF Museum when they're open, they do have stocks of them, because that's how my dad got one for Tibenham, that I actually put in that book, which is the one where I talk about Tibenham. So what was I saying? Yes. So it's not just the actual airfields as well. It's all these airfields had dispersal sites. They had support sites. And I mean, when you look at Tibenham as a place, if you ever look at the map, you can see the runway. It was in a set sort of A-shaped format, which they all were. But then you look at the bigger map that shows you where all the support buildings were. It took up a whole village. And you drive around the village and you can still see remnants of some of the buildings. Unfortunately, a lot of them are being pulled down because there's nothing they can use them for. But it's just that as well. When you think of it, it must have been buzzing. And then if you look even further, you get the local village pub where the airmen were all gone in, where they have toasted possibly the loss of one of their friends, or many of their friends. And there's so much. You don't just have to focus on the runway where the action, I suppose, took place. And then another thing, which you were saying about, you didn't know what this Caterpillar site was previously. I had that experience because where I grew up in Norfolk, obviously, again, Little America, there was loads of air bases there. I knew that the old hall in my village was where the 2nd Air Division had their headquarters during World War II, but I thought they just had it in the hall. I never thought it expanded out, because about a mile from there is RAF Hethel, where Lotus sports cars are built, and they actually use the runway as their test track. And I knew that. Anyway, I remember I always used to like walking in the woods at the hall. They used to let the villagers, it was private property, but they used to let villagers walk their dogs in it as long as we didn't snoop in the hall, because the hall was then Lotus Formula One. But I always felt I was being watched. It's the only way I always felt someone was watching me, and I put it down to it was security from Formula One. Didn't think anything of it. And it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And I remember I was chatting to my parents as I was visiting them, and I said, it was weird. Those woods, I always felt I was being watched. Matacos, you probably were. He said, you do know there was over 300 personnel in the woods during World War II, at least. And then he showed me the map of all the different support buildings that were in the woods. And it kind of explained a lot, because I always felt I was being followed or someone was walking behind me. And then there was one time which I think, I was walking my dog, and I'd taken my son, and he was, my eldest was about 7. And we're walking along, and I could feel, I'm not a medium, but I do pick up on things, and I could feel someone breathing on my neck. It's the only a feeling of when you feel someone breathing on the back of your neck. And I kept thinking, and we'd been in the woods about an hour just exploring, and my son was starting to get a little bit jittery. The sun was starting to come down. My little boy was starting to get a bit like, can we go home? Mm. Yeah, sure, we'll work our way out. I knew the woods like the back of my hand. I've been going there for 40 odd years. And I felt someone walking behind me, and I felt them breathing on the back of my neck. And because I didn't want to scare him, normally I would have turned around and said, can you tell me who you are then? Don't just follow me. That's rude. But I didn't want to scare my son. And then what was really weird is he was right in front of me. So I'm deliberately not acting as though I know there's someone behind me. He turns around and says, Mum, who's following you?
Really?
I was like, how did you know? And he went, I just knew someone was following you. And at that point, it disappeared. So, yeah, things, they don't have to be where the action was, if you like. These kind of links to airfields. It's huge. Huge.
Yeah. I think there is a lot more bases around, isn't there, that we just don't know about. I mean, even like down the road from us, there's another one, isn't there, Neil, called Myra?
I was just going to ask Penny that if she knew anything about the old Myra. I think it was called Linley.
Linley?
Yeah, I think because it's near Linley Lodge, but it was in I'm on the Hill.
I don't know that one off the top of my head.
They used to take off from there, didn't they? Because they took the spire down from Stoke Golding Church. So when the plane took off, they didn't hit the spire.
Yeah. Thing is that, you know, there's not many people who've really, really bust a gut to actually document all of these. I mean, there's an amazing writer, and actually Nigel and I were talking about him. There's a guy called Chris Huff. And he's written 3 books detailing all the Second World War airfields. Unfortunately, some of them are out of print now. But I'm just looking to see if it may not have been called Linley, because this one should actually cover.
At the time, I didn't even know that was an RAF base, and we only picked that up because we were in the hospital, and the nurses there were saying there's a man walking around with it was like a brown jacket or something, wasn't it? We did an investigation there, and I picked him up, and it was this brown leather like bomber jacket, and he was actually from he said he was from the airbase. I
don't know that one. I must admit, my knowledge of the sort of the Lincolnshire, Leicestershire basis isn't as good as it is in Norfolk, because I grew up in Norfolk. And so, you know, you've got all the ones in Norfolk, like Little Snoring, which was RAF. In fact, I know, I'm pretty sure Guy Gibson landed his Mosquito there once when he was training in it. Or training. He didn't really train in it. He felt he could do it no matter what. That's possibly what killed him. You've got the American ones. So you've got Tibbenham, you've got Old Buckingham, which was another one of Jimmy Stewart's. You've got Shipdham, I can never pronounce it. You've got a couple near Fakenham. You know, they were all over. And then you've got some of the fake air bases that were put up there to try and they used as DVs. So there is so much that. The one thing I will say, and yes, Gaynor, I know there's going to be a road trip. Gaynor on there, she lives up your neck of the woods. She's the one who, when we do the talk in June, is my chaperone, if you remember. She's the one who's going to carry all my bags for me. Well, I haven't told her that.
Is she the roadie?
She's my roadie. Roadie and groupie. She's very good friends with Richard Estep, and so around she's my groupie, but when he's around, she's his. So we, you know, I'm number 2. I'm the reserve.
All right, okay. Nigel just says where. There's a fly around. Nigel says, where is the base near to? I think does that refer to the one that I mentioned? Got an insect. It's near Nuneaton. It's in between Nuneaton and Hinckley. He said
It's
it was called
Lindley.
It was called Lindley.
It's on the A5, isn't it?
Yeah, on the A5. I'll leave that one with you.
Lind, Lind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's LY. It might be LY.
Southeast of Polesworth in Warwickshire. Yeah, I've just googled it.
All right.
Yeah, no, I hadn't looked at that one.
All right.
I'll
leave that one with you then, Penny.
Yeah, thanks for that. My husband hates me as it is.
Penny, you're safe. Nigel said he's going to track it down for me.
Yeah, Nigel's a sweetheart. I do love Nigel. We do sit in airplanes. And again, Twitter, it's okay. You've known Richard longer than me. I'll let you off.
It's just that I was born and bred in Arm of the Hill, and we could see the runway. It was Myra when I was born, so the track was the runway, and the control tower was still there. Whether it is now, I don't know, because it's all been built up. But if you can find, I'd be interested on a personal note to see any details about it, because like Jane said, they did take the church spire off Stoke Golding, didn't they, Jane? Because that was how the planes took off direction.
Yeah, a lot of them. I mean, I know a lot of them used church spires as sighting sort of points, so they knew how far they were from their airfield. I know they did in Tibenham for sure. Because they. I mean, now when I've flown from Tibenham, we use the radio mast at Tackleston, but obviously back in the 1940s. So they would use the spire from the church. As once they saw that, they knew they were coming in. But yeah, I mean, I know some of the runways, I've read accounts of them having to take off on the big bombers when they've sort of crash landed or whatever, especially some of sort of the big American ones when they were over in Asia, like the Asian side of things. Their runways weren't big. They were just about big enough to land on, long enough to land on, but they weren't long enough to take off on that. And I can't remember the name of the island because I didn't expect to talk about this. There is an island where there's loads of sort of wrecks of 4-engined American bombers because they just couldn't get them off the island. They couldn't fly off. They could repair them, but they couldn't fly them off because they needed more runway than they had to power up. And they just left them there. And I was just thinking that would be an amazing place to accidentally land and go. I'd be like in a playground with all these old aeroplanes that I could explore. And I can't remember it. I know it's in like the Asian sort of like near Japan, out that way. I mean, there's a great film. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Unbroken with Jack O'Connell when he plays Louis, the American sprinter who was a prisoner of war.
No, I've not seen it.
Oh, I mean, it was on just before Christmas, and I love Jack O'Connell as an actor anyway. And the film's really, really good. And he's actually a bomb aimer on a Liberator, and they have to end up going out, and the Liberator crashes because its engines. But it's a fascinating film to see what it would have been like in a bomber at times. Yeah. You know, the POW stuff, and that's what it tends to focus on. But I found it fascinating when you saw how those bombers were for all the men. It's a really good film. If you haven't, I really like it. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of Angelina Jolie. She directed it. And I'm trying to think what the guy's name was. And if anyone knows it, it was Louis something. He was an Italian-American athlete. And I can't for the life of me think what his surname was, but it's a true story. And it's really, really good. And they use Liberators.
Yeah. I've seen Gaynor and Nigel have found all the information out for me. Gaynor's put loads down, and Nigel says there's a website I can look. So thanks
guys.
You two guys. I shall read up on that. Just out of personal interest.
Everyone's great. Everyone is so helpful. I love it. It just makes me go all warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, it's you always hear. Well, you tend to hear about the negative people in the paranormal, don't you? But on our experience, since the centre's been open, the vast majority of people within the field are fantastic, friendly, helpful. It's just a minority. It's just a few the public a whole tend to find out about. You know, it's like investigating now, isn't it? During the lockdown, there's a big thing about that at the minute.
Yeah.
But they'll carry on doing it anyway. So just
They will.
let them get on with it. Don't watch anything of it.
Yeah.
And if they get fined, that's their problem.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I in theory, I could still go out on my own at the moment. I don't, because I've got my kids to look after, so I can't get out, and I'm not dragging them out and putting them on camera. It's happening, and I don't. You know, there's a few people who are going out there on their own and sort of exploring a place in the middle of the day, showing what it's like and everything else, and that's their exercise for the day. I do struggle with those who are going out as groups who aren't part of their bubble and saying it's a job. I kind of you know, I'm not going to judge and say, you know, you break the law, because that's not my. But I do think, yeah,
hey, that's how we feel. You know, legally within the guidelines, I can go. Well, we could go up to the centre because it's our place of work and do a live feed.
Yeah.
Personally, and I've talked to Jane about it, we don't think that's the right thing to do. So we don't do it. So we just sit at home talking to lovely guests like you.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't tend to watch live investigations very often, if I'm honest. I don't tend to watch the TV ones either.
No.
There's only a few groups who I do actually watch. I do like Are You Haunted, I must admit, because I like how they're back to basics. And there's always something in one of their videos that has me snorting with laughter. I think when I interviewed them about last, it was the fact that Wayne turned around and suggested that him and Jane, Are You Haunted Jane, did the brothel first, and the look she gave the camera, I had headphones on as I was listening, and I actually did burst out laughing and spit my drink everywhere. And my husband's like, "What are you watching?" I said, "Oh, it's an investigation." Oh. Okay. Or when Sarah turns around to her son and says, "Let's go to let me take you to the brothel." It's like, wow, that's so funny. Yeah. You know, but I tend to I prefer watching history programs, if I'm completely honest. I'm quite I don't have much spare time to watch stuff. I'm always reading or missing interviews with one of my favorite guitarists by my favorite band to do stuff. So
You're not going to let us forget that, are you?
I do feel guilty.
It's all right. It'll be recorded. I'll be able to watch it afterward.
I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight now. Yeah. So anyway, getting back to the subject, I've heard a few people say it's wrong to investigate old airfields. Have you ever come across that?
No.
I sense the but.
Yeah, there is a but. When I had conversations with people about those investigating crash sites where people died.
Yeah.
Because near to Tibenham, there are a couple of quite well-known crash sites where liberators came down and the whole crew was wiped out. And one of them, it was one of the stories that someone told me, that he saw something there. He heard screaming, like men screaming in pain, and doesn't know why. And he didn't know this was one of the crash sites. Now, I don't think... Okay, how do I word this? I think it depends how you do it and what mindset you're in with it. If you're in with the mindset that you're going to use this for a huge PR exercise to show what an amazing investigator you are, and you want to be paid loads of money to get a TV show because you've investigated a crash site and made contact with one of the victims, no. If you're going in there because, and Jane, I'm sure you can attest to this, people who've died horrifically still want to talk. They still want to hear their story. They still, if they're still intelligent spirits, they're still sentient beings. I find, I mean, Nigel's just put it there. It's exactly what I was kind of going to say in a different way. But I think you go in there respectfully, which I always would. I go in there asking them to talk to me, and I kind of treat it how I would if a friend of mine was in a horrific accident and was in hospital, wouldn't be walking into the hospital going, I'm here, woohoo! You know, I would go in and I would be calm, I would be friendly, I would be caring, I would be, do you know what I mean? And that's exactly how I treat sites where lots of people have died.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no, I don't think anything worse in investigating an airfield or a crash site than there is a hospital or a children's home or a house where, you know, 3 or 4 people in the family died from tuberculosis or whatever.
Yeah.
I think, and I think the problem is the way a lot of people, no, not a lot, that's wrong, a way some people approach these. They approach it in a screamy kind of, it's an asylum, something's going to hurt me. Well, not necessarily, no more so than that school up the road. You know, and I do think it's the way you do it, because they still have a story that they want to be told. One of the things that happened when I was investigating Tibenham, and I knew bits. Obviously, I knew about the Jimmy Stewart link. I knew about when it was formed. I knew the aircraft that they took from there. I knew what one of those sounded like, even though we don't have any in the UK. We had something come through on the Spirit Box, and my husband was with me, and it was only the second time he'd done an investigation, so he's got no preconceptions whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it didn't really make sense, but I wrote the details down, and we were staying at my parents' house, and the next morning my dad I think my husband was chatting to my dad over the breakfast table about what we'd found. And he gave Dad this information, and my dad was like, that rings a bell. He went off and found the aircraft name, the name of the pilot, the date the guy didn't come back from this mission, and these were the things that we'd been given on a Spirit Box.
Yeah.
You know, he hadn't returned, so he'd crashed. He had crashed. I think I can't remember the exact details now, but he had crashed. So as long as you're respectful to them, and as long to me, it's no different to talking to anyone else.
That's right.
It's and people sometimes think I'm being flippant, but I'll have a laugh and a joke with them. You know, I think when I say at Tibenham, there was myself, my husband, Gaynor, who's on here, and a lovely guy called Mark Dudley. I don't know if you know Mark. Yeah. He was Black Shuck Paranormal Group. Yeah. And we were in the clubhouse and we were trying to get some activity going because it's never been investigated, so it was a bit slow. And Gaynor had some 1940s like big band music on her phone, and we started playing that. And I was sort of sitting there in the table, you know, as you do. And I said, "Oh, if anyone wants to dance with me, come and say hello." And my arm got grabbed, and you saw the go down on my arm as though somebody had grabbed it. And I was like, "All right, steady on. I'll come and have a dance." And I think it was, I can't remember, it was Gaynor or Mark said, "Does they know your husband's sitting there?" And Wayne, my husband, was like, "That's all right. She can dance with a soldier. I don't care." And it's that kind of banter. But as I always say to people, it's not me being disrespectful. It's me treating them as if they were alive.
Just being normal.
I think it does come down to, like you say, it's still down to respect, isn't it? The way you respect them. And if you're doing it for, you know, sort of personal gain with a big ego and all that sort of thing, Spirit will see straight through it anyway. And, you know, if you're doing it for all the wrong reasons, you're not going to get the interaction and the communication that you want. Yeah. You know, they know what's in your heart. They know what's in your intention is. And if you do it respectfully with the right intention, then that's when you will get the responses.
That's right. I am doing it for personal gain because I want to learn. I want to learn about them. I want to be able to tell their stories. And yes, I'm the one writing the books to tell the stories, or writing the blogs, doing these kind of interviews. But
when I say personal gain, I mean like, you know, to get your viewers and to get your stars and all this sort of stuff, and to make a big thing of it and all the drama that goes with it. And
I'm not a drama llama. I'm not a drama llama. I mean, the more people I reach with what I find, the better, because the more people who learn, the more people who realise what's out there, the more people who want to ask questions. And I did actually say, somebody said to me once, "Would you like to be famous?" And I said, in all honesty, yes. But the reason I would like to be famous is because I'd have access to more places. Because if I was as big as Zach Bagans and I phoned up RAF Scampton they're probably going to let me in.
Yeah.
Penny Griffiths-Morgan, who does the Haunted Histories podcast, they'll go, who? So that's why I would like to be famous. So I have access to these places, but not for an ego or anything like that. It's just so I can go to places that, as a mere mortal,
yeah,
I can't.
Yeah, and we have spoke about this before about you know, people who sort of say they wouldn't go to these sites, but you put those people in a castle, say, and they're going to be the first ones that want to get down to the dungeons and the torture chambers and that sort of thing, where thousands of people have probably been murdered horribly. And it's the hypocritical side of it that sort of winds me up sometimes, because they'll come out with this holier than thou, or won't go to a site where people have been murdered and stuff like that, but they're the first ones to go to these sites and want to get into these places where even worse things have probably happened. You know, it's you know, you've got worse sort of things. And you know, and I have covered this before in one of my articles in the Haunted Live thing. You in magazine, you cannot, if you go to these places anyway, spirit will only come to you if they want to. You cannot summon victims or people like that to and force them into any sort of conversation or communication. They will only come if they want to. So and of course, again, your intention's got to be right. So, you know,
I mean, I am careful if I was going to somewhere where someone had been murdered, how recent it was. But more so that if I was going to write about a murder that, say, happened 20 years ago, chances are they've got relatives and descendants still very, very much alive, and it's still very, very fresh in their memories. Now, that's where I would be very, very careful.
Well, I think that's where discretion comes in, isn't it? Where you discretion, you don't have to broadcast it to the world that you're doing it if you've got the opportunity to do it. You could do it for your own investigation.
Yeah. But you know, I've never really investigated somewhere where there's a known murder, because I don't go a place for a famous death, if that makes sense. I go a place because the place appeals to me, or if it's military, the whole military thing appeals to me. I mean, you know, they call me the military magnet because something tends to happen. You know, it's just, I can't remember who coined that. I think it was one of the guys from Fright Nights coined that on me. But, you know, but I find it fascinating, and I can talk. It's the same with the workhouses. I go into one of them, I've got enough background knowledge, I can get a conversation going.
Yeah.
So, you know, if someone asked me to go somewhere where somebody had been murdered, I wouldn't say no, but it's not something I would seek out, because there's so many places I want to visit.
Yeah.
Need to worry too much about doing the more dramatic story. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Yeah, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so it's flown by this hour, which is fantastic. So tell everyone who's watching how they can get your books and how they can hear your podcasts and everything. Well,
the easiest way is to follow the Haunted Histories page on Facebook, or join it. Sorry, because it's a group. Join the group. We're very friendly over there. It's a nice page, and it's got people from all over the world, which is great, because they share their stuff from all over the world, which I absolutely love. I've also got the website, hauntedhistories.co.uk, that you can go check out. The books are all on Amazon. So if you check out Penny Griffiths-Morgan, it should bring up all the books, and it'll also bring up the Bob in Jail one that I did the forward for and was part of the investigation, again, with Gaynor. So she's following me.
Yeah, I think a bit of a stalker there.
Yeah, I'm worried about this. To the step. So that'll come up as well. The new one that I've just, where's it gone? This one. I am saying to people, don't buy the hardback copy just yet, because this is the proof that they sent me, and I wasn't happy with it. So, but it is available on Kindle. If people like reading Kindle, just wait for me to say the hardback. Buy it. But that's all on Amazon. The podcast is through Paranormal UK Radio, and is on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, or whatever it's called. I can't remember all the different things, but I advertise that on my page as well. And
also, fingers crossed, you will be at the centre to do a talk in June. I can't remember the date, but it doesn't matter.
I could tell you. Hold on. Let me my little faithful diary. 19th.
19th.
19th, yes.
Fingers crossed, if the lockdown's over, Penny will be doing a talk at HAPRC 19th of June, and then you'll be able to investigate with Penny as well afterwards.
Yes, we'll
So,
be doing a little investigation. See, I'll even see if I can, because I know I'll come to the centre earlier in the day to sort of work my way around. I might even think of some little sort of experiments for people to do as well. You never know. You never know. But yeah.
So thanks for being our guest. Next week we are talking about doing live feeds, investigating.
Sorry.
And we've got we've got Mr. Stevenson coming on.
Oh, you're gonna have trouble getting him to talk. You're talking Paul here?
Yeah.
He doesn't talk. He's so quiet.
Yeah.
So it's a standing joke between me and Paul. He always says you can never shut me up, and
the one condition is he don't tell any of his jokes because some of them are horrendous. But so we've got. I don't know if any other guys are coming on. So we've got Paul Tung because they do live.
They do.
Feeds. So, and that's the topic for next week. So that's it for tonight. So thanks very much for joining us. I think everyone enjoyed it.
With you again.
Yes. So we're going to go now. So we're going to say goodnight, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Was asleep in